Up next on Profiles in Caring, presented by Equitable Life and Casualty, giving the gift of education to young African girls. We've shared their story before, but what you won't believe is what they've accomplished and how big this group has grown in just 5 short years. We revisit the Children of Ethiopia Education Fund right after these messages.
The following Profiles in Caring is brought to you by generous funding from Equitable Life and Casualty, committed to being the premier life and health insurer for the ultimate generation, today's senior American.
Hello, and welcome to this edition of Profiles in Caring. I'm Kimberly Perkins. Like a mother with a lot of children, you're not supposed to have favorites, but this nonprofit organization is one of my favorites, the Children of Ethiopia Education Fund. It's a group I profiled 5 years ago when it first began, and it was literally a mom and pop organization. Now it's grown into a major movement attracting national attention. But to start, let's rewind to 5 years ago and the first time I met Norm and Ruth Ann Perdue and the Children of Ethiopia Education Fund.
I always was kind of a dual career guy. I worked for as the team photographer for the Utah Jazz basketball team as a contract photographer for close to 20 years. And I worked for the U.S. Department of Labor, OSHA, as a procurement officer.
I walked into that hospital and asked to speak to the director of nursing, and I walked in her office and sat down and said, I want to be a nurse. I've wanted it since I was 5 years old. I have no money and I have no way to get it. Would you possibly pay for me to go to nursing school if I agreed to work here afterwards? And she looked shocked. She said, I've never had anyone ask me that before. And she said, congratulations, you're our first sponsored person to college.
The NBA photography was kind of the, I guess you could say, fulfilling for what I knew of what fulfilling was then. It was fun. It was kind of exciting, being around the players and going to events and the All-Star game and the NBA Finals twice and seeing Michael Jordan and Magic Johnson.
Then what happened?
And then life took a 360-degree turn. The NBA downsized, and several photographers around the country found themselves out. So there went one of my jobs. Still had the government job, but it was actually through the Jazz, though, that we found Ethiopia, interestingly enough. Some good friends of ours, Lon and Deanna Kennard from Heber City, Utah, had adopted 6 children from Ethiopia, and they would bring these 4 girls and 2 boys to the games with them. And they said, you know, we're doing an expedition to 4 of our children's village, a little city or village called Kursa Ilala, and we need a nurse, which Ruth Ann is a nurse, a registered nurse. We'd love to have somebody document the trip. They said, you're a good photographer, so we went with our oldest and our youngest daughter in June of 2001.
What Norm and Ruth Ann had discovered in Ethiopia was not the stereotypical misconceptions. The famine of the 1980s had long been over, and Ethiopia was no longer a nation dying of starvation. However, it now faced other challenges.
They have nothing in the way of resources as far as, financial and social. There's no infrastructure in that country at all whatsoever. You're on your own, and that's all there is.
I think there's almost 2 distinct impressions I get as far as areas. One is the rural people, and one are the city people. Out in the countryside, they don't have really anything. They're mostly subsistence farmers, and they grow their own food, and they live basically in adobe or mud huts with grass roofs. They're susceptible to diseases and parasites, and maybe a lot of times don't have clean drinking water. In the city, they live basically in a slum situation. Many families, sometimes to a compound. There may be 8 to 15 families living in one walled-in community, and they all just live there together, and they have maybe one water pump that they can get water, one toilet that they all share. And it's pretty shocking for most Americans when they first see that.
But they were so rich in love and sensitivity to each other and to family. They were so rich in the things that we're lacking here.
Little did they know at the time, but this simple humanitarian trip to Ethiopia would reprioritize the rest of their lives. And it all started with meeting one young girl.
I met a cute little girl named Kadist down there who wanted this watch, which I still have. And her English really impressed me, so I asked her how she learned this English, and said she was going to a private school and that Grandma was struggling to pay her schooling, but she was going. And so before we left, I told Ruth Ann, I said, I just have this feeling we ought to see what it would cost if we just covered her expenses. And when they told me $100, $125 to pay for her books, uniform, tuition, and I asked them, is that a month? And they said, no, that's a year. I was like, oh wow. So right there I paid the 2 years of her schooling.
I knew we were headed back. I didn't think it would be as an organization. Oh, I didn't have any idea of that. That wasn't even a thought in my head at that point. I just knew we were headed back.
And come back they did, many, many times, but not as part of that original group. Now as their own nonprofit organization, COEEF, the Children of Ethiopia Education Fund. Inspired by what they'd done to help young Kadisk, their mission was simple: to help provide, through American scholarships, a quality private education to the poorest girls of Ethiopia.
And why girls? Why keep this exclusive to young women?
Over there, the girls just have a disadvantage, and we're trying to balance the sheet a little bit to have, by the time the high school age comes, it's usually there's more boys in high school than girls, because the girls, a lot of them have dropped out of school. And also, girls have certain problems with, they might get married young. HIV and AIDS is very prevalent there.
The way out of that, the poverty and the poor health and the economic disaster, is an education. And my goodness, Ethiopia is, wow. They have a long, long ways to come in that regard, into recognizing women as, first of all, as equals and as powerful human beings.
It is expensive to fly to Ethiopia, and Norm has had to sell some of his photo lenses to cover his costs. But he says that's okay, because his life now isn't on the sidelines. It's right here in the heart of this village. What is your name, sweetheart?
My name is Maskaram Taddese.
And how old are you?
I am 12 years old.
How do you like being in this program, being one of the special girls?
I am so happy.
When Profiles in Caring continues, we've followed Maskaram's progress over the years, and you won't believe where she is today.